things that make me happy are when I've not got to look at a clock.
And eating good food really makes me happy.
Just being here, really. It's just life is good, isn't it?
Just getting what you want.
She makes me happy. Sunshine, music, just being, I don't know, healthy.
I like to party, I like to go out.
Hang out with friends, go dancing.
I guess money also makes you happy.
Something where you're not relying on money.
My cat.
My nephew.
My wife makes me really happy. And drinking.
A lying. So being comfortable.
Sleeping, really.
And movies as well.
Watching Liverpool beat Man United away.
Just be drunk.
I don't actually know what makes me happy.
More to life.
More to life.
I'd like to think there's more to life than this.
I often wonder if there is. I don't think there's more to life.
I'd like to think there is, though.
I don't know really.
Don't know everything that goes on in life, do you? So,
Yes, I do think there's more to life than this.
I don't know, really.
Hello. You're still here. Whenever I get up and feel awkward at a microphone, I always think of two things. Beginning of Alpha. One is my deep, profound cynicism, suspicion of anyone religious with a microphone. And the other is that I left after 7 minutes of being here when I first came to Alpha, and I went to the pub. Principally because I don't know how you feel. I don't know where you're coming from or why you're here, but I remember being kind of beset with a tsunami of white teeth smiles, which I thought was clearly some flipping agenda here. And then they offered me food, and I thought, well, it's drugged. You know how you feel. I just had a wall around me, and I was like, And so I went to the pub and I saw my friends and they said, where have you been? I looked a bit pale, I think, or paler than usual. And I said, well, I've been to this weird religious thing. And I said, oh, really? I said, yeah, it's kind of a course. And my mate said, do they have guitars? And I said, yeah. He said, oh, it's a cult. And and I thought, yeah, you're right. So I kind of just body surfed the whole thing, wasn't really interested, and thought it was very dangerous. I always have thought, as a cynical person, I was raised, I had a kind of born with a genetic predisposition towards cynicism, so I just felt that I dodged a bullet by avoiding everything to do with Christianity. And I'm standing here in front of you now, and I'm doing this talk, and I still have a lot of questions. The premise that someone comes up to do a talk, and you would therefore assume that all their questions are answered, as far as I'm concerned, is rubbish. So I'm still on this journey. I love doing Alpha. It kills me. I like the friendships I make. Even though I did leave, I think twice. I tried 2 courses and left twice early. But one of the guys that I stuck with in my group is now one of my best friends. So friendship-wise, I think it's wonderful. I mocked religion. I genuinely, all through school and into college, thought that religion was created, really, because we are born and we are shocked by being human, and we look around this planet and we think we've got to maybe give some kind of purpose or reason for our existence. It's a neurotic response to existence by creating a God. You create an invisible friend to whom you can speak, because that makes you feel better. And so I'd say you're just making it up. And your invisible friend is just sort of silly, really. And all religions are made on this basis. You just create various tribes around your various gods, and then you worship what you want. But it's also, I would say, very difficult. Like I find life, I don't know if you find it easy, I find life difficult. So you're presented when you're born, you go to school, and you have hoops, like exam hoops, and then more exam hoops, and then maybe college hoops, and then you've got to get married, and you have children hoops. I don't know, mortgage hoops. That's difficult. I haven't really done any of them. Then suddenly you've got this religion, which makes life harder. You know, you're going to fail. You know, you're guilty. Oh, thanks. Why bother with that? Why bother with any of that? And Stephen Fry, who I love, said, what, after all, is a halo? It's just one more thing to keep clean. And so I would have agreed with that, definitely, and thought, I can't read my notes, that it's all taken from, like I'm, again, on a stage. It's like a morally superior thing. I'm above you. I know, you don't. Listen to me. It's this kind of, oh, I'm better than you. That's how I saw it. Particularly Christianity. I mean, religion per se I thought was dangerous, very controlling, but Christianity I felt was the worst because of its moral kind of ascent. And my friend Robin has a kid called Monty. Monty was sitting on his knee. Monty was 4 and was in church at the back. And the vicar said, let us pray. And they bowed their heads and he said, I'm sorry for what I've done wrong. The priest said this. And Monty said, what's he done wrong? And his dad said, all right, it's not just him, everyone here, we've all done things wrong. I went, all right. So he got his dad's knee and he shuffled, walked up the side, went into the loo, which is, I suppose, he's about in this corner. He went to the loo and he came out. And instead of going back up the side, he came to the front. And all you guys were standing, looking prayerful. He just stood in front, 4 years old, went, "You naughty, 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 naughty people." Walked off. When Robin told me that, I just thought, yeah, that's a pretty good summary of how I saw it, with someone who wasn't particularly good telling everybody how bad they were. And pointing, you, at the back. So, hypocrisy reigned and atheism was great. I don't know whether you're an atheist, agnostic, theist, whatever you are, but for me, atheism felt kind of like it was on solid ground of evidence, and I liked it. And it felt healthy. And the only thing I would have said was that my mum, actually, she always says this: look, stop your religion and be kind. There are too many of them. Just be kind. If the world could be kind, if we could just be kind to one another and drop all these weird things, we'd be a lot better off. And I always felt, you're probably right. Ella Wheeler Wilcox said this: so many gods, so many creeds, so many paths that wind and wind, while just the art of being kind is all this sad world needs. I would have said, yep. I would have agreed with that. And I think for me, I don't know what reasons you have for belief or disbelief, whether you're raised believing or whether you had some, I don't know, everyone has their reasons. But my main reason for atheism, the thing that bolstered me most, wasn't my sort of disdain for the boring irrelevance of religion. It was to do with suffering. I can't bear suffering myself, and I can't bear other people suffering. I hate seeing it. I don't know how you feel about it, but that was my main reason. Because the Christian stance was, there is a God, and he loves you. Oh, that doesn't really kind of relate to the suffering in that corner, does it? They don't really fit. One of them isn't true. Well, that suffering clearly is true. So that was my, I'm angsty. And so I kind of went through this, and I don't know if you have I have salient moments where occasionally in life you get like slapped in the face with a wet fish, metaphorically. And I was painting in southern Africa in a place that was, new to me, and I was living in a mutta, and I hadn't really seen suffering like it. Maybe you have. I hadn't seen suffering to this extreme ever in my life. Such was it that, I just said, how do you cope with this? And in the mutta that I was staying, that opposite me was another mutta, and there was a lady who just lost a child. And I got to know her, and she had a little bit of paper stuck on the wall, and it just said, handwritten, "I am the bread of life." Just said that. And then in brackets said Jesus. And I said, oh, so you believe that stuff? And she said, yeah. And I got to know them, and I saw what they had was way more than what I found back in my kind of culture. And I said, isn't it ironic, though, that you're talking about bread, but you seem to have very little of it? I'm not trying to be clever or kind of diss your faith, but isn't it odd? And, in conversation, she kind of implied to me, she just said, she said, that isn't about real bread, it's about something else. It's a spiritual bread that you feed on. What do you feed on, Charlie? Where you come from, what spiritually do you feed on? And I kind of got quite defensive. I said, oh, well, I suppose, football. I go to the pub sometimes. I cry in films. I don't know, I couldn't answer it. I don't know what spiritual food meant. I just couldn't answer it. And she said, I think where you come from, you fill your brains with things. You're very learned. We shouldn't use the word learned, but she said, you read a lot. You think a lot. Your brains are full, but what goes underneath here? What fills you in there? What? And she was very gentle. And I just said, I don't know, really. And she said, well, this thing, she just said, this is good, and you're loved. And again, I just thought, well, clearly if you had an education, I was very arrogant. Anyway, but it did catalyze me to thinking, to the question, what is there more to life, and is this relevant? And I'm thinking about that kind of stuff all the time, but I'm still profoundly cynical. So, if you look at a painting, it's one-dimensional, but a sculpture is all 360, and I'm like that. I like to go all the way around things, and with religion, that's what Alpha is great, because you can explore the whole, rip it apart, pull it apart, look at every angle, find out, argue, say things, say what you want. And I did that, and I thought really hard. And I recognize in our culture in England, in London anyway, that there does seem to be this kind of disquiet, this kind of angsty sense that there has to be something more, that however rich we are, however successful we are, it's like, come on, where is it? And Jack Higgins was on the radio, and I was painting in my studio on a quite dark, cold night, and he was being interviewed by a girl, and she said, at the end of the interview, she said, well, you're very successful, aren't you? What do you wish you'd been told when you were 18? If you could tell yourself one thing when you're 18, what would you say to yourself? And he was quiet, and he just said, well, I suppose I'd wish I'd said that. I wish someone had told me, actually, that when you get to the top, it's empty. There's nothing there. And there was just a long pause, and she said, really? And he said, yes, it's nothing there. And she was interviewing him on the premise that, there had to be something great because it achieved so much, and he was saying it's empty. And I know it's a cliche, we all hear it, but I guess I, at the time, thought it would be great to get to the top just to see if there's nothing there. We, and then we can decide if it's empty or not. But it was, again, made me think, what, and my kind of arty friends, my artist friends are all very kind of, I suppose, explorative is the kind of nice word for it, trying everything, going every avenue, physically, literally, however you like to understand it, and taking things, doing things. And we all knew, and probably still do, that something's wrong. I remember I had a weekend away, and a friend of mine who's a painter who now gets six-figure sums for things. He sat on the end of the bed at 3 a.m, and I always remember this long silence, and I wasn't quite sure why he was there. I felt mildly awkward. And anyway, he said he just was sighing. I said, "Are you all right?" And he said, "This isn't it, is it? It's just not it. This isn't it. It's not here, is it? This is that existential angst. It's endemic, but it's real." And I suppose the answer for us was never religion, because religion was rules, and rules didn't really give you much. And so we assumed, all of us, this crowd, that what life was is you live, you do your best, you paint as hard as you can, whatever you're doing, you do it to the full, and then you die. That's it. And you give it as good as you got. And I suppose that on that basis that atheism was the real thing. And Hitchens, I don't know if you read, I love reading atheist books. Quite why I'm standing here, I don't know, I like them. Anyway, Hitchens said this, who's a great writer: religion has run out of justifications. Thanks to the telescope and the microscope, it no longer offers an explanation of anything important. Dumb. We've got microscopes, we've got this far. Nothing. It's nothing. It's all over. It's history. And I would have agreed with that, except to one question. And I'd say, Christopher, why is it that in spite of all our discoveries with the microscope, with the telescope, why is it that we still hunger for a spirituality, for transcendence? What is it, despite our extreme successes on one level? Are we still insatiable? What are we looking for? Everybody asks it. I don't think there would have been an answer. And then Freud, who I've loved, he said this, that religion was an illusion. It is an illusion, but the problem with it is that it falls within our instinctual desires. Why, Sigmund? Why do we hunger? Why are we here? What is this? And in science, it's great. It's amazing. I loved it, but it doesn't, it answers the question, how and what. It doesn't address the question, why? It's a big question, why? And so I'm always saying why, and I annoy a lot of people, I think. I did at school. I was always saying, why are we doing this? I don't feel like that. Anyway, I was very hungover one morning. And I was lying in bed, and it was on a friend's farm, and I didn't really want to move, but I could hear in the distance, I don't know if you ever hear this, a vague sort of church bell. For whatever reason, I thought I was going to get out of bed, and I was going to go to this church. So I wandered down the path, and I went down this valley, and I went into the church, and there were 3 old ladies at the front, a chasm of maybe 30 pews, and then me. With an array of different coloured books. You ever seen that? Like green ones, big ones, black ones, red, tiny ones, and they meant nothing. And I just because I couldn't really hear what was being said. He didn't have a Madonna kind of fixture. I started flicking through this large book, and it was the Bible. And I always hated the Bible as an absurd kind of text. And it fell on, my eyes just fell on this one line. And it just said, "I've come to give you life and to have it to the full." And I read it again. And it was Jesus speaking. And this is odd because we have life, we're atoms, we've got together and then we come apart at some stage, but generally speaking, I have life. Why are you bringing me more? What is this? I tried to ask the vicar later, but he was serving tea, and it didn't really work. But it did trigger my thinking about could Christianity, I didn't even like that word very much, be a spiritual affair rather than a moral and legalistic one? Could it really be the greatest cover-up in history? Because in my culture, we all hate it. But could it have something? And I discovered quietly, and why I'm standing here slightly sweatily and awkwardly, is I would say to you, it's the very antithesis to how it was presented to me. It was presented as an apple, and it's actually an iguana. It's presented in one way, and there's something else. And I was in Romania. I don't know if you've ever been to Romania, and I was working with some kids, and there were a team of us, and we were the English crowd, and we were promised this tuna at the end. I don't know if you like tuna, but I like tuna, and they knew we did because we were English, and that's all they eat. And we got on the Friday the tuna, and I ate it happily. But the issue with the tuna was the packaging. I said, let the tuna down magnificently. I still have a tin. Can we have just that's? So when you see a tin of crap, your immediate response is not to go, oh yeah, I really got to open that. It's got to eat that. It's really a very fine snack. And when I'd eaten it, we'd all found it funny. I said to my friends at the table, don't you think that's a bit like Christianity? And they said, no, you're a freak. And I said, no, I think potentially it is because it looks crap. All my life it's been presented as something that is crap, and therefore who would open the tin of crap? Why would you want to do that? Very, marketing error. But they didn't agree. But anyway, the point is, I kind of had this feeling that, that there was more to it than that. But basically, I would assume that most of us feel that it's kind of ships passing in the night. And the statement is made in one direction. And you go, oh, I'll go this other direction. I heard about a Texan who was on holiday in Devon. He approached a farmer, and the Texan said, is this your farm? And the farmer said, yep. And the Texan said, well, how big is it? And the farmer said, oh, well, it goes from that tree to my house just there. And the Texan said, man, that's small where I come from. I have a farm, and I get in my car in the morning and drive, and by the time the sun sets, I'm still on my own land. And the farmer said, yep, I used to have a car like that once. Favorite joke. Tenuous link, except for this whole idea that a statement is made, and then it's missed. That was me with Christianity, completely. And another one of my kind of big moments with that, I would say, was at a wedding. And if you're ever at a wedding, sometimes you're sat next to people you don't really want to sit next to. It's a bit like Alpha. And you're there, and I was sat next to a bishop in these kind of massive purple robes. And I had sort of 3 or 4, and I was thinking, right, I'm actually going to give him what he deserves. So I'm just going to really go for this. So I laid into him, and I said, you're just kind of posturing and a member of an incredibly cliquey club that justifies its prejudices with texts and is pretty exclusive and incredibly hypocritical. How do you feel about that? And he was the gentlest soul. He was really lovely. And he sort of laughed at me, which was disconcerting. And he's a great guy. And he just said this. He did 2 things. And I always remember this. He told a joke. And his joke was this. He said, Charlie, 2 bishops were discussing the moral decline in Britain. One said to the other, I didn't sleep with my wife before I was married. Did you? And the other bishop said, I don't know. What was her maiden name? And at which point, I sort of slightly wet myself that a bishop could be telling me this joke. And I thought, you're actually human, after all. And then he said, listen, Charlie, I'm going to answer you. I'm going to tell you why I wear these things, and then I'm going to shut up and we're going to go for a dance. I don't want to discuss this anymore. So he said this, and I wrote it on a napkin. Charlie, this is vaguely what he said. None of us is perfect, but I believe we are loved. Perfectly loved. It's the only reason why I agree to wear these silly purple clothes. We're human, we make mistakes, that's our condition. It's kind of messy, and life is difficult, but I believe we're loved and forgiven if we desire it, and this is called grace. This is the grace of a loving God, Charlie. And Jesus brings it, and forgiveness, and all this stuff, and change comes. That's how it happens. And yes, there are moral implications and decisions we need to make, but it's a gentle journey, and primarily a very quiet relationship, and not an in club or an out club or an exclusive thing at all. It's really about love, because that's who he is. It's kind of what he said. And I remember lighting up a cigarette and leaving the table and going to see my friends who were on another table. And I said, I've just heard this kind of monologue. And I remember telling them about it, and they just got really angry. And because religion, I think, can raise temper levels. And they just said, I remember saying, just effing well lead a moral life. Stop rambling on about weird stuff. Stop being weird. Don't get into weird stuff. It's dangerous. Just be moral and kind, like my mum says. But I think C.S. Lewis, if you want to read a really good writer, C.S. Lewis is a great mind, and he said this of Christianity, strange word. It will teach you that in fact you cannot be good, not for 24 hours on your own moral efforts. And then it will teach you that even if you were, you still wouldn't have achieved the purpose for which you were made. Mere morality is not the end of life. You were made for something quite different from that. And I remember reading that over and over again, saying, well, what are we made for then? If morality seems to be this kind of thing, be as good as you can. What are we living for? And it's taken me a long time to accept that actually what I think the human being deep down, way beyond the conscious self, way beyond my even being aware of who I am and standing up here quite awkwardly, is deep under my ribs that African lady tried to describe is something I think the human really thirsts for. And I think it's the inside of this tin. Not literally tuna, but it's this thing that tastes good, and it is love. And to know your love, I reckon, honestly, if our country or if the world knew for 10 seconds a day that it was profoundly, unconditionally, passionately, compassionately loved, it would be unrecognizable. But we don't. Most of us. And it's difficult. But I think, the whole idea of religion being rules, the rules don't love you. They just guide you in places. They don't love you. I'm rambling a bit. But the problem is, I'm standing here again, and you look at the church. I looked at the church and I thought, well, it's hypocritical. And I think Gandhi said, I like Gandhi. He said, I like your Christ. They're nothing like your Christ. And he's right. It's kind of impossible to be like Christ. This is the problem. He's very different. And I suppose, that we just live as best we can, but it's a journey into love, and that changes you, but we're not good. I don't know a single person who's good or moral, regardless of your belief system. And I think that what we're looking for deep down is not an addition, but somehow it's an internal completion of who we are. And I think that's what we're born to know, is just being known. I remember biking over Battersea Bridge once, and suddenly had to stop on my bike. And it's a weird thing to say, and I've never said this before, but it was just kind of a sudden dawning that I was known and loved. And I had to stop the bike and think, am I insane? Or is this real? I hadn't got to church yet. But if it's true, it's beautiful. And I really think that it's the most beautiful thing that exists. I've done this picture of a mouse. Can we have the mouse picture? There it is. This is a mouse in a wheelbarrow. This is completely irrelevant, the actual picture itself, but I coloured in all of it, so it's so tightly coloured you can't see a single mite except for one blemish on his thumb, but that's actually a mistake. Ignore that. So Christianity, or religion, or God, or whatever, was presented as this. If you colour within the lines, if you live perfectly, you might get that. The dilemma is that I am more like picture 3. That's me on a good day, wind behind me, on the inside. I might be able to get it together. On the outside, do not see the F word too much, just be nice to people. But on the inside, I'm that. I'm jealous, bitchy, I lust, all these things. I'm all over the shop. Dilemma. And what I've discovered is that this is the answer to that. You're loved. And the reason why we're loved is because what's behind it, which is the cross. And we have this, that's further on the cross. But what I've discovered is this is called the grace of God. It's what the bishop tried to tell me, is you're loved. And this love, if you can get to know it, changes you. And I think when the question is there more to life than this? Yes, there is. And I wouldn't say it was a religion. Religion is a very strange word. But I think it's love, which is interchangeable with the word God. I think. I'm sure people would shoot me down. And I would say to you, if you're here and, you feel like picture 3, which is all over the shop, and you've been judged for that, particularly from a Christian perspective, then I would just like to say to you, I'm really, 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 really sorry that everybody's like that underneath. No one has the right to judge. We're all in the same boat. But that's great because we're all loved. And we're going journeying into it. And that's why I love Alpha, because we're just on this journey into being known and loved. And so I'm sorry if you have been judged. It's ridiculous. Having said that, it is basically very simple, but we make it look really odd and complicated. And I was in America, and I was on an Alpha conference, which sounds very important. We were just talking about Alpha in a church. And my mate Jamie was doing the kind of the folksy thing with the guitar, and people were singing along. He said to me, "Listen, it feels a bit vapid, a bit kind of empty. Can you get some percussion?" So I went off to a shop, and I bought this in Manhattan, and it's a banana, but it couples as a shaker. So I stood for 3 days. It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I stood beside him, behind him, for 3 days on the stage, while he did his "Oh Lord, we love you." I did this, okay, thinking it was great, and then some slower ones. And at the end of the weekend, I was about to leave, and this woman came up to me. She said, "Are you Charlie?" And I said, "Yeah." "Were you doing the worship?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, I just want to say thank you." And I said, "Sure, we try." And she said, and I was about to leave, and she just said, "I have just one other question." Sorry, my accent's terrible. She said, "I have a burning question." And I said, "What is that?" She said, "Well, why were you on stage?" For 3 days, shaking a banana. My banana wasn't mic'd. All she saw was this. Three days. What do you say to that? Oh, well, I tried to find it, and I couldn't find the shaker in there, so I'm sorry. Anyway, and I thought about it, and I thought, that's what Christianity looks like. It looks like someone standing around shaking a flipping banana all day, for days on end, and no one understands it. What are you doing shaking your banana? Metaphorically. And actually, so to summarize the talk, all I'd say is this. It looks crap. You open it, it tastes good. But then we go and shake bananas. It looks weird, but it's not weird. There's nothing weird about love. There's nothing weird about friendship. There's nothing weird even about prayer. It's pretty natural. We freaking weirdify it. Sorry. Well, I said enough. And these notes are just ridiculous. Look, how can you cope with that? That's it. So, I would say cling to your seats, enjoy Alpha, say anything you like. You're loved, you're free, you can say what you want. I quit twice, but now I think I need a 12-step program to break the addiction of doing Alpha. I'm, I think, on my 61st course. Sorry about that. And enjoy yourselves. And no question is a bad question. Ask, but just,